Hey, Lisa.
Hey, John.
Happy Christmas Eve-ish, I think, when this comes out. Christmas Eve, almost Christmas Eve.
Yeah, very, very early on Christmas Eve morning. Happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas. And welcome to Signal Fire. We're doing something a little bit different today with no guest. Thought it
Indeed.
might be interesting to uh, have a conversation and let you know a little bit more about us and why we're here and why we think, not why we're important, but why we think these
We're not important.
conversations are important. Why media matters.
One way to do that is actually to tell you a little bit where we get our news. Like we are both, I think, fair to say, kind of news junkies, and so we thought maybe interesting for folks to hear a little bit about how we get our news and think about where you get your news, and I don't know, we can all learn from each other. This would be a good one for folks to send us follow-up comments and places where you think we should be getting news, and maybe where we do today, but you don't think we should. Who knows? So Lisa, where do you these days? Where do you get your news? I've been very conscious since I knew we were going to talk about that. I've been like, I'm kind of like, it's very unsystematic. So I'm curious. Maybe you can describe it.
I felt the same way. There was a little bit of hesitation when I like, where do I get the news? Like I feel like I'm constantly consuming it, but it's in a really disorganized way, which sort of speaks to the problem of everybody being overwhelmed by the amount of information that we now have access to. I still read some traditional media, some, of the big news organizations, not on their websites. I might end up there, but it's because I got an alert. It's because I saw a clip somewhere else. I saw somebody talking about, that there was a piece in the this or that. I am devoted to the Atlantic. I think they do brilliant reporting. It's obviously not ripped from the headlines, breaking news type stuff, but
once
really
in a while,
thoughtful.
Once in a while, it's pretty breaking. But mostly it's not. Yeah.
So certainly not in the print, but
like when they get on a signal chat with the Secretary of War,
right?
Sometimes they break news.
That's true. That's true. That did break pretty quickly. Although he even held that for as long as he responsibly should have.
Right.
So it's really a hodgepodge. It's podcasts. It's social media. It's new. A lot of new media creators. The ones who I think I believe personally are reputable and are doing evidence-based news coverage.
Wait, so but actually this is kind of an interesting, like the mechanism of that is sort of interesting. Where do you get like the new media creators you consume? Where are you seeing them on, like Instagram? Are you like Substack? What are you doing?
Yeah, it's a fair number of Substacks. I am a little shocked from time to time when I see the number of Substack subscriptions that I currently have. And, there's the occasional paring back of.
Yeah, I know. I just want to say to the folks at Substack, you're welcome. I am personally,
we're doing our part.
My family is personally subsidizing. Right. Yeah. Anyway.
And definitely Instagram. There are a fair number of creators. I'm not a TikTok person. I used to get a lot of my news from Twitter/X, and now it is, I will go there occasionally, but it is such a cesspool. It's such a soul crushing experience for me now to spend any time on there that I microdose Twitter. It's the only.
That's what they do. That's what they do over there. I think that's what they. That's the way. That's the way.
Yeah, that's their thing. Yeah, that's Elon's thing. That's primarily it. Blue Sky. I am on and off on Blue Sky and Facebook. Yeah, I communicate with my aunts and my cousins on Facebook, but not a big news consumer there any longer. It's pretty hard to find.
I mean, definitely some commonalities there. So I do, I mean, I'm trying, this will make it sound more systematic than I think, and I think it really is. I think probably like you, is a little bit of like, I don't know, it just kind of comes to me in the ether through, through all the things. Right. But,
Yeah.
and I was thinking about this, you'd asked this question the other day when we were chatting, like, what's the difference between like news and commentary or analysis or whatever? And I think the reality is like a lot of what I would put in the category of news, I will admit to you, is probably more commentary than actually
Yeah, me too.
news. I mean, it's like it's definitely way more commentary than news. But I mean, overall, I still like, we are one of the weird families that still gets the physical paper every day. So we get the Seattle Times, which is our local paper, delivered every morning, and usually we'll start the day with that. Although I usually end up reading, weirdly, I end up reading the Seattle Times on my phone while my wife reads the paper, the actual physical paper, 2 feet away from me, um, just for various reasons. I still read the New York Times every day, but mostly not the physical paper, but mostly in response to notifications of breaking news, not as a sort of single kind of consumption event. So I get a lot of news magazines, and this is my kind of one like general observation, thinking a lot about this space lately, is I still think for most people the best way to get the news is a weekly magazine. All of the news-based apps that we have this tendency to kind of flatten all of the news into a sort of stream of like random ephemera. This happened, that happened, this happened, that happened. Like a sports score is the same as like, whatever. And so the news magazines have like the space to reflect on the week. There's editorial decisions that go into kind of highlighting what are the big stories. And so I just in general, I think they're great. The Atlantic is great. I agree. I'm an Atlantic reader, both online and the print edition. The Guardian is
Guardian's
the
phenomenal.
Guardian Weekly. Like if you're like, you can have one single news source, it would be the Guardian Weekly. It's excellent. It's global. It's smart. It probably leans somewhat left, but not like insanely so. Like it is, and because it's largely outside of U.S. politics, it doesn't have like a really strong partisan valence associated with kind of the U.S. Kind of left-right binary. Anyway, it's pretty good. A couple of others, but I do a lot of newsletters like you. I have way, way, way too many Substack subscribers, like so much so that I basically had to, like, my inbox, I've killed my primary inbox, and I just like, I've written one Google rule after another to try to like get them into a folder, and I have not really managed to do it. But I think the Jonathan Last's triad from the Bulwark is like another one of those things. Like,
he's brilliant.
A small, if you had to really limit your diet to a few things like that, that is always smart. It is always highlighting both important things in the news and like themes. And his like point of view on the world is very aligned with mine. It was so a little bit of a downer, but also I think like very realistic. I think Democracy Docket, Mark Elias's thing, is great. I think Bolt's magazine, which covers a lot of kind of local election stuff and election law things. I mean, maybe that's just an area of particular interest for me, but I think it's really excellent. And then a bunch of podcasts. So I am a faithful listener of the Bulwark's, probably most of it, but certainly the daily podcast with Tim Miller, which is a mix of what I would think of as kind of actual news, in the sense of they're interviewing people, they're talking to newsmakers, and a lot of commentary that I guess aligns with my politics to a substantial degree, but also I just think is good and smart and sort of up to date. And
and Tim's just wildly entertaining.
Yeah, and he's just like a super likable and entertaining, and it's a fun. He's a good hang, as they say, for an hour. And then a bunch of their other podcasts are pretty good too. Increasingly, the Bulwark, which to me is like the most interesting kind of media property of the last couple of years, right? They have like built this thing that started as pure commentary and a bunch of former Republican types that kind of were charting this new lane as largely never Trump Republicans, and now it's become like a full featured news source. They just hired Catherine Rampell as the economics head. Like they have like real journalism
Yep.
happening,
Building it
and
out into, a real news
yeah,
source. Yep.
so it's cool. I'm a big fan of Steve Schmidt's The Warning, which I know is like puts me in probably like weird company because he's like a very
He's a specific taste.
he's like a very specific taste. I told I mentioned to my kids like, oh, that guy, and like he's like a very they you either like it or you don't like it, and you have to microdose it. That's your favorite word of the day. You have to microdose. You can't take it. Fortunately, they're very short. Anyway, that's a few things. I was thinking about this. What kind of news consumer were you? A news consumer as a kid? Were you like like, has this been a long time thing or just like an adulthood thing?
It's a forever thing. In my house growing up, we had the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, 3 different papers from our state were always around. And I remember watching the evening news with my parents and 60 Minutes. Really clearly remember as a kid watching 60 Minutes with my parents from the time I was probably, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. It was just it was a foregone conclusion that you would just be informed. That was just part of what human beings do is as especially in a democratic society. You just keep yourself informed. You know what's happening. I was thinking the other day how many like cabinet secretary names from when I was 10, 12 years old are permanently in my head. And a fair number of them I actually respect as opposed to, where we are today. But yeah, it was news consumption, conversations about the news. We sat down for dinner most nights when I was growing up, and that's what we talked about around the dinner table. It was either that or sports, and it was usually more news than sports. It was, and I think I've passed that on to both of my sons that, it's just important to be, because at some point you're going to have to vote. And at some point you're going to need to have a point of view, and you should be educated about what's happening, not just in your country, but in your world and how your country affects your world. You need to understand that as best you can. How about you?
Yeah.
I also understand you're a reader of the Epoch Times. This is
right. Yes, I did leave that off the list. Okay, so I mean, it's kind of interesting because we're pretty news oriented in our household. I mean, so we got our local paper, the Times Herald Record, that venerable institution. But like a lot of sort of small towns, I had a it's an okay paper that did a lot of like syndicated news, whatever, and had some local commentary and stuff. But we were very like politically attuned in our household, and my parents' politics were very conservative, and all of our I was very much too. And so I started listening to talk radio when I was probably 11, I don't know, 12, something like that. Like I would come home from school and listen to 770 to WABC out of New York, which reached up to upstate New York, which is where I lived. 50,000 watt blowtorch, AM blowtorch that before the power down at night would reach all the way up there, and I listened to Bob Grant, who was sort of the grandfather of horrible talk radio, would end every program with "Kill Gaddafi" was what he would sign off with, and then Rush Limbaugh before he was in syndication.
Wow.
And so on. So that was a lot of my quote unquote. I mean, that was obviously news adjacent. It's sort of commentary, and to some degree, I think in reality kind of comedy, more than it is kind of news. But we spent a lot of time on it. I was also like a super nerd as a kid. Like I would pore over, the encyclopedia and the World Book Almanac and memorize facts. And so that was kind of the sort of kid I was. But the Epoch Times is kind of, or Epic Times, I think is how they like to pronounce it, is kind of an interesting story. So my politics and my parents' politics have kind of diverged. Probably we both moved from our position somewhat closer to the center line to somewhat further out in both cases. But I, as a way to kind of, not have political discussions, but kind of share political point of view, I thought it would be a good idea to order my mom the Atlantic. So I had the Atlantic delivered, and turnabout being fair play. Sometime in the last couple of months, she started to have the Epoch Times delivered to me. And if people don't know what the Epoch Times is, it is a really it's a right-wing propaganda outlet that is funded by the Falun Gong, which is a sort of, I don't know, some kind of cult that is banned in China, and it is and so this group of Chinese expatriates have formed this and major media outlet in the United States, which they've subsidized massively, so that they can provide a newspaper to a lot of American senior citizens, I think, which is largely their audience. And it's like if, Pravda were written in English by Chinese expatriates about the United States government. Like it's like sort of that level of, how strong is Donald Trump, and how cunning and insightful is Kash Patel. And mixed up with like, how ginseng can help you avoid the common cold or whatever. Like, so it's got like some interesting human interest stuff. But anyway, so yeah, that's another thing that's in our news diet now is the Epoch Times.
I'm sorry to hear that, but
that's good.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's a perspective, and it gives you insight into.
It's definitely a perspective, and it also turns out it's a perspective you can't easily cancel. For the record, I have been trying to cancel it, and it is not that easy to cancel it. So.
Yeah, it started randomly showing up in my inbox. Fortunately, it does not show up in my mailbox. I can't unsubscribe. I mean, I have unsubscribed. I just can't get it to stop. So, best of luck not having that. You're going to have to move if you don't want to get it anymore. And it'll probably follow you anyway. So,
fish to wrap or something. Anyway, fires to start. There's other uses for it, but. But your point, you said something there about how you thought about, or your folks thought about, and how you kind of passed down in your family this duty to be informed. And to me, that's like a super interesting thing. Which sort of, how do you? I say this a lot to my kids, and I think it a lot relative to what it means to live in a democracy. Like the highest duty, the highest role in a democracy, in a republic, let's be more specific, in a republic, is the role of citizen. The president works for you. Your member of Congress works for you. They do a job for you. Right. Like that is it's the fundamental premise of government, of the people, by the people, for the people. And, you can go, there's a million quotes from the founding fathers about this. I think this Jefferson is the one about how if I had to choose between having a government with a newspaper, or newspaper, like I would choose just to have a newspaper and no government, right? Like, because the idea of a free press, and the idea of that it's a citizen's duty to be informed about the world, is so core to living in a republic and to exercising your duty as citizen. And I do think it's kind of a funny, I get it, and it's a whole premise of this show and a lot of the work that we do together, that it is fundamentally hard in, the end of 2025, coming into 2026. It's fundamentally hard to know how to be informed in a world where there's such a surplus of information. So I think there's a lot of sympathy for that point of view. But the idea that you don't have a duty to be involved, that it doesn't matter, that's the one I struggle with, and and it's hard for me to put myself in that place. And I just think, in a really fundamental way, it's just wrong when we cut off, aid to Africa, when we launch a war on Venezuela, when we blow people up. You know who's doing that? Your government's doing that. Your government, that's being done in your name. And you have a duty to know what's happening in your name and to do what you can, even if that thing is small.
And it's not just that it's difficult to be informed and to find the right news sources. It's hard to know whether or not the news sources that you are consuming are either covering all the things that they should be. What's being left out is often as important as what's being included, because you're being steered down a path very often, depending on what the news outlet is or the creators are that you're following. But there's also this weird notion that really sort of surfaced for me and bothered me going into the last election, that what we need to do is have more informed voters. That, our problem is that we have low information voters making bad decisions. Right. And I don't believe that we have many low information voters. I think some of I think most people, a lot of people, are trying very hard to be informed. And it has become so difficult to know whether or not what you're consuming is evidence-based, fact, or it's misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda. And so our problem isn't just that, some people aren't consuming enough information. They're not dedicated to trying to be well-informed citizens. It's that they're so dedicated that they are consuming massive amounts of information that is just a slop. It's just not, it's not real, or it is so slanted, or it is, leaving so much out of a story that people are developing this huge sense of confidence that they are very well informed, which makes them more and more impervious to questioning their own beliefs when they're given a piece of information that conflicts with what they want their confirmation bias to be. And that's put us in a really bad place.
Totally. I'm struck by this. I was funny. I was having this conversation with my college age daughter the other day, who said, she asked me, if I knew what APAC was, and because she had gotten a question from one of her friends about it, and she didn't know, or like she had some vague idea, and the friend was like, "Oh, basically." APAC is they've essentially bought every U.S. politician, right? Like there's no, and so politics isn't, it isn't even real, right? Like APAC just owns it all, right? And I was
so American Israeli Political Action Committee for
Sorry, so for the right, exactly. Quite reasonably, I think a lot of people won't know it, but again, there's like a meaningful subset of our fellow citizens who are like hyper tuned in to this little story, right? In the same way that with Candace Owens, it's the whatever, the French Foreign Legion, he's just going to kill her or whatever, like weird sort of subplot in the, so, to your point that they're consuming a lot of information. It's just, they're consuming it in some little weird cul-de-sac. And it's a great conversation. My daughter quite reasonably was like, skeptical of this person's narrative. And like, so like, what can you tell me about it? And we spent some time going online and like, looking up their political donations and like, and like the relative size of that as a lobbying organization and so on. Right. But I do think this quality of people sort of tuning into kind of particular, especially, and I think this is one of the weird kind of psychological biases that people have. People love what I think psychologists will call occult knowledge, right? These things that it feels like it's sort of outside of, it's a little outre, it's a little not, and people like that feeling that they know something that other people don't know. Right? It's like one of the main tropes of advertising on the internet. They don't want you to know. As a guitar player, I'm always getting these ads for like the thing they don't want you to know about the guitar. Dude, there is nothing they don't want you to know about the guitar. Like, the guitar's been around for like 400 years, and everything that there is to know about it is known. And like, the reason that I'm not good at it is not because nobody told me something. It's just because I don't practice enough.
Right.
Like, that's what it is. But
the secret to learning without trying.
And like the whole internet sort of runs on this idea of like occult knowledge, and so I think you're right that a lot of what is happening is people are they're in a weird way, they're over tuned in, but they're over tuned into the wrong things, and they're over tuned in without really a kind of toolkit or framework for thinking about, is this true? Is this bias confirmation? Is this somebody just building an audience, right? Is this Alex Jones talking about lizard people and whatever because there's like an audience to be built there, or is this a good faith attempt? This is a phrase I think we just need to use a lot more in our like good faith. Like, we have to, is this a good faith attempt to arrive at something that is true? And what are and I guess related sort of, what are the values that underlie it? Like, are the values here truth? Are they about living in a pluralistic democracy? Do they have anything to do with the good of our fellow citizens? Or is this really about somebody just trying to get, a kind of agenda across, or to build an audience, which is so much of what it is, right? It's just to build an audience.
That is,
I think you've got a couple of, it might be good. I think you got a couple of clips look at that are maybe a little in this vein. So do you want to maybe tee those up?
We have a clip from Mark Halpern's program that I'd love to share with folks. The only reason that I discovered this was because John Harwood, who we had on the show a couple episodes ago, had reposted this or retweeted or re-X'd. I don't know what they do over there anymore. But anyway, I found it earlier today. And this is such a good example of what we're talking about with leading people far afield from a fact-based, substantive, important conversation for someone who's supposed to be in the news to be pushing. So,
are telling me that the family of I just need to look up her name. I apologize.
Ella Cook, I think.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That the family of Ella Cook, the Alabama young woman who was a sophomore, has been told that she was the target of what happened at Brown. I have no idea whether that's true. There's other theories about why the person did what they did, but now that we don't know who the assailant is, it's going to be harder to say. But if it's true that she was targeted, that's a big story because she was one of the most visible conservatives on that campus. Don't know that it's true, but probably most of you don't even know that that's being alleged because you'd have to follow certain accounts on X or have sources, as I do, who are telling me that. So, Amber, if she was targeted, and again, we don't know that, but if she were targeted, what would the implications of that be?
Well, I'll start with a couple of things that I think lend credence to that theory, which is one, typically when we see mass school shooters, they don't just stop and walk away, right? Usually they keep going until they're apprehended by police, shot dead, or they kill themselves. Yeah.
Amber,
in this case,
let me just stop you. Yep. I should have been clear. She was the number 2 person at the Young Republicans branch on Brown's campus. So that's why some people are concerned if she were targeted. Go ahead, Amber. I apologize.
Yeah, actually, let's go ahead and interrupt Amber because she's not going to say anything that's useful here.
Useful. There's speculation about speculation.
Yeah, I mean, this is just so incredibly. Mark Halpern is supposed to be a news person, and look, I've got feelings about this guy that go beyond his news coverage, but just in this, this was 3 days before the person was now found having committed suicide in New Hampshire. this has absolutely nothing to do with this girl. We now understand. He was also the person who murdered the MIT professor.
MIT professor, yeah.
And,
yeah.
Right. And had gone to school with him. And, the connection is clearly not about conservatism, but that narrative suits Halpern's the audience he is trying to build and to feed. So he wants an anti-conservative narrative around a horrific school shooting. You're going to politicize this, and pretend that, not everybody knows this sort of, thing is being discussed because they don't have, my sources.
Yeah.
Well, your source, like what, some guy that you saw some clip on because everybody doesn't watch who you do or follow who you do on social media. This person was clearly a crank. And we're supposed to feel ill-informed because we're not following cranks.
Yeah, totally. You wouldn't know this if you weren't listening to Cat Turd or MAGA conservative X2375 on Twitter,
based in Russia.
Right. No, I mean it's infuriating for so many reasons. Not least that it's internally self-discrediting. Right. We don't know who the person is. We don't know anything. Right. But you wouldn't know about. So let me speculate, and let me tell you that you should feel bad for not knowing about this baseless speculation, because you don't follow the kind of brand. I mean, it's so illustrative. And as you say, I mean, not only is he doing it, but he's doing it because he's getting a whole segment of his program out of it. Right. So it's not just Mark Halperin, I'm going to get on and say it. I'm going to implicate these other two guests who are going to like explain the implications of the thing, which not only do we not have any inclination is true, we have no facts whatsoever. And of course, people will have watched that generated clips, that clip we just saw, right? That clip will, you and I often, reference that Twain, a lie's halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on. I mean, that's what this is. This is a lie, which is spread, which feeds the narrative of victimization and feeds the idea that every bad thing that happens is political. I mean, we hit this. We've hit this place in our society where every time there is a mass shooting or some kind of incident or an assassination, the very first thing is, was it my team or the other guy's team? Right. I mean, that's everybody's first inclination. And it's not just our personal inclination, it's the narrative frame that the news media imposes on all of this, which, red or blue, right. And in the absence of facts, why let the facts stand in the way of a good story, right? Like, you just leap to this. And of course, there will be, as with every one of these things, there'll be a bunch of conspiracism that, from Newtown to every one of them, a whole little cottage industry of conspiracies. So even though, the shooter has now been identified and is dead, lots of people will believe, it was some kind of, it was whoever, it was the French Foreign Legion, it was the Mossad, it was, right. It was Democrat, it was Hillary Clinton, whatever.
You can't put the genie back in the bottle. This stuff gets out. I would love to be proved wrong, but I will be shocked to learn that a correction or retraction or clarification was put out by Mark to his audience to make sure people understood that his baseless speculation was entirely wrong. And he apologizes for that kind of baseless speculation. It's just it's out there. The clip that John Harwood posted was from a right-wing conservative, not conservative, just a right-wing fringe person who had retweeted Halpern. She has 250,000 followers.
There you go.
And in the comments, there was another right-wing person on X that had over 200,000 followers. So, it's off to the races. You don't get it back. And it is so incredibly irresponsible and dangerous in the era that we are in, where we are dealing with real political violence to fabricate potential political violence where there wasn't any. And it's dangerous. So on the other end of the spectrum,
I'll just interject. Sorry, as the whole idea that this person is the vice president of the college Republicans, and that therefore that makes her a prominent. As somebody who was an officer in my college Republican club, I can tell you that there wasn't one person on campus who could have identified me. But maybe that's different here. Anyway, totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
Sorry,
we should have known that this person would be a target because she is a member of the college Republicans.
Right. Exactly.
Anyway, so at the other end of the spectrum, responsible journalists. I want to share this clip of the last night of the co-hosts of the CBS Evening News giving their farewell comments. So let's go ahead and run this one.
Better person. I've learned quite a bit from working with you. Proud to call you not just a colleague, but a friend.
Thank you, Maurice. A year and a half ago, we didn't even really know each other. And you've become a model for me and a trusted friend. So thank you. What the viewers don't know is that long before they could see us, we were thinking about you, the viewers. Planning for months in a conference room, we talked about your attention, how precious it was, and how we would honor it. That question has guided the decisions you saw and many you didn't. A research team that sweats the facts that shape how you see the world. Correspondents who follow the facts into war zones, into countries where they could be jailed, into sharp exchanges with the powerful who don't like being held to account, including a president who insulted them for it.
Why do you blame the Biden administration
because
for
they
what
let
this
him
man
in.
did?
Are you stupid?
Stories of wonder, of loss, of courage, asking why until the answers ran out. It has been an honor to put the work of our correspondents, producers, editors, and writers before you, and to work with my partner, Maurice, who put his heart into our shared concern, doing right by you. Your expectation has been our responsibility and our reward.
It has, my friend. And so for one last time, that is the CBS Evening News. I'm Maurice Dubois.
I'm John Dickerson. Thank you for watching.
And good night and good luck.
Two more responsible journalists gone from network news.
It's a little bit self-serving, of course, but it's also, I think, is this word that's become, or phrase that we talk, a lot about in popular discourse, virtue signaling. And I think that is a kind of virtue signaling, right? It's like it's talking about the aspiration of what it is to run, and it's surely it's true that they don't always live up to that, right? They're a corporate entity, and they always have certain pressures and limitations and other things on them. But just the fact that that's how that is their self-conception, right? That is what they are trying to do. We are trying to do these things. We have this, we check our facts, we ask hard questions, we ask them until, we quote, run out of answers, all of those things. It's, to contrast it to the earlier clip, it's clearly not the case that Mark Halperin is trying to do that, right? It's clearly not the case that a lot of what passes for news, certainly on cable television, but really broadly on across all of our major institutional media, is trying to do that. And so it's nice to see it, and it's you feel a little wistful for an age that feels strangely like it's ending.
And an age that it feels like, with Barry Weiss now, controlling the news organization at CBS. I don't think it's coincidental that these two journalists are exiting stage right, or maybe stage left, at this particular time, and the the very last line of that really hit me because Dubois said his sign off was good night and good luck. And a lot of people probably recognize that as being the standard way that Edward R. Murrow signed off from his newscasts. And I think it is, you talked about virtue signaling. I think this is another signal that he was trying to send, that we are in a perilous time in our news media, and there are corporate forces that are incredibly powerful, that are bigfooting what journalism should be, and it is making us all more poorly informed, and making it more difficult for us to find the truth when we so badly need it right now, and holding power to account, which you talked about last week.
Yeah, and this whole right. I mean, the CBS News, which this week hosted a town hall with Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, which
hosted by Barry Weiss.
Hosted by Barry Weiss, and I'm not saying that Erica Kirk doesn't deserve to be heard, but the idea that you would host a kind of national town hall and turn over that space to someone for a single kind of point of view, it's hard to see, who in the guise of news, right? In the not I think this is, I think it's like an important question to ask ourselves around all of the news institutions that we trust. Like, what are they? Is their goal here to inform us? Is it actually to inform us? Is their goal something else, right? Is it to curry favor? Is it to grow their audience for their advertisers? Is it what is it? And sometimes those things, sometimes you can achieve more than one goal, certainly. But when you look at the way that what feels like real journalism is eroding out of these institutions, you have to ask yourself, what is their real goal? What are they building these institutions to do at this point? We
have to question why all three major networks chose this week to cut into, to preempt primetime programming, to have a 16-minute campaign spot of the president speaking when they knew in advance what his remarks were going to be. This wasn't a surprise to them. They didn't like many of us fear that he was going to be announcing that we were about to invade Venezuela. They knew that this was going to be a justification, a denial, hang on a little longer, things are going to get better speech, and that there was going to be a lot of inaccurate information that they were going to be presenting to their viewers, that they are not obligated to do. Just because a president wants to be able to have primetime space to be able to speak to the American public, that's not a given. And no has been said to many presidents before. And no
several times to Barack
Obama,
if I'm not mistaken, including around some fairly substantive things.
Yeah. So frustrating that, it was these three networks when we were talking about our news consumption. When we were kids, these were the three networks that we all got our trusted evening news from as a nation. And now the trust has to be, you have to think about what the other motivations, as you were just saying, might be for what is appearing.
Totally. And it's clear that there's some degree of just currying favor there and not wanting to make enemies. Inadvertently, I think they probably did the country a service by letting people see that kind of mendacious insanity there. And I don't know, for folks who are a little younger than us, I would sort of challenge you to go back and go on YouTube right now and look for speeches of Ronald Reagan, or even somebody who, Ronald Reagan was sort of known as a great speaker Look up Joe Biden's primetime address. Look up Gerald Ford, who is kind of known as kind of a dolt. Right? Look up one of Gerald Ford's speeches. Any American president, and then watch it side by side with that kind of mendacious rant from the guy at the end of the bar that happened, and both in terms of substance and kind of delivery, and ask yourself what is happening both in our politics but in our news media, that is what is taking space there. Anyway, it's a good maybe a good segue to kind of the last segment we were going to cover, which is sort of what's a segment we'll call undercovered, overcovered. What is the news media covering too much of, and what are they covering too little of in the last week? So what's your first candidate? What's first up in the queue for you?
I'll jump in with in the overcovered category for 500. The media has recently been overcovering itself. Occasionally, this fascination with itself rears its ugly head in the media, and between the Olivia Nunzi, Ryan Lizza saga, which far too many of us now know far too much about and wish we didn't. And this week it was the Susie Wiles big piece in Vanity Fair that, my God, the number, the analysis of the piece in Vanity Fair. I mean,
yeah,
look,
11 people subscribe to Vanity Fair. I don't. Yeah, I like
some good writing.
They all live in New York.
Right, exactly. And we became obsessed this week, members of the media and people doing analysis on this piece, with the photography. We really, we got into the minutia of why the shading on someone's nose was orange, and how the lines on their face drew you toward the orange nose. I'm like, my God, what the hell are we doing?
But have you seen Karen Levitt's pores? Come on.
I have now.
Right. Come on. You got to admit. Yeah, no, that was definitely overcome. I mean, yeah, as you say, I think it's just this phenomenon of the media just likes to talk about the media. I mean, these are their friends. This is where they were. They understand the dynamics of these stories. It feels very real and current and personal. And boy, was that a great example of it. And there was some important stuff. I mean, I will say, like, in a weird way, that was the kind of inside the beltway, in that case, literally, dynamic of the media talking about the media was definitely overcovered. I agree with you about that. A part of that story that I think there were a number of substantive disclosures in that story that maybe were undercovered or brought some attention to undercovered stories. I think the kind of blithe way that the chief of staff, and for people who don't know the story, I don't know if you are not living in this world, if you're not a news junkie, basically the chief of staff of the White House, Susie Wiles, gave a series of 11 interviews to Vanity Fair magazine, or Chris Whipple, writing for Vanity Fair magazine, the author, and was incredibly candid or let's say indiscreet, maybe more than candid, because I suspect there's a certain amount of manipulation in it, but there was just like a lot of stuff said, and some of it was pretty embarrassing, just objectively, among other things, that they didn't want USAID to be shut down, but Elon, what are you going to do? And it's like, I don't know, like hundreds of thousands of people are dead, so that's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. These things happen, and how can you stop them?
But but when we want the ballroom down, like, it's down tomorrow, right? Like, it's down. So it's a weird, like, so there's a few things that I think were like substantively pretty interesting in it. The Epstein stuff, she broke news on the Epstein stuff, which was kind of interesting, which is, if anything, I still think is maybe undercovered, and we can talk a little bit about that in a second. But I think the other, this on the undercovered side, I think the potential war with Venezuela remains undercovered. I mean, we have we're I was, when I was thinking about this, comparing it to the war in the invasion of Iraq in 2003, and everybody who was watching the news at that time will remember. I mean, it was a huge, weeks long. Would we? Wouldn't we? Did we have were there WMD? Very sort of serious deliberations about it. Lots of, experts on television talking about the intelligence. And of course, very, infamously at this point, Colin Powell going, before the UN, I think, I don't actually, I think it was the UN, that it was a slam dunk that we had the goods on them. And then we had a congressional, vote to authorize this. Right? It was a period of national deliberation and a kind of seriousness that, even though the outcome was disastrous, we clearly just made the wrong decision, and maybe one of the great history's, the short list of history's great blunders, and a thing which has set up so much that has come since. But not for want of seriousness, or at least a certain kind of seriousness. And now it's like we're about to invade Venezuela, and aren't we? What's going on? Who knows? Something. Warriors, blah blah blah.
Fentanyl,
I don't know.
Blowing up boats, cocaine. We hate
Something.
drugs. We pardon drug
oil.
kingpins.
Maybe we're going to take their oil. Like the whole thing has this kind of quality of like a I don't know, like some kind of B-list television show that you've heard of, but you're not really. I don't know. Something's going on over there. Some people like it. I don't really know. It doesn't make any sense. It's a massive story. It is certainly, 99 Venezuelans or people, off the coast of Venezuela anyway, are dead already. We engaged in what appears to be a straight up act of war. The blockading of a country is definitionally an act of war. Legally, it's an act of war, has always been recognized as such. And it's just like, it's kind of happening. I don't know. Also, have you heard about, whatever, like random story? And it's just like, it's strange, very undercover.
The lack of pushback and demand for answers from the media is so disappointing here, because in part it's awful because there's no pushback from Congress. There seems to be this lack of interest in the fact that we currently have an administration that is willing to go to war without the support of the American public, and without an authorization from Congress, which is how that is supposed to work. We don't have that. That is the legal framework.
Totally. And even more, not to put too fine of a point on it, and no legal or moral justification. Right. Like that's yes, absolutely. Under our Constitution, it is Congress that declares war, right? And we've had, the War Powers Act, whatever. There's we've given the president a lot more power there. That's been a long-term slippage. It's not only attributable to Donald Trump, but at least presidents and the media have felt. Presidents have felt the obligation to make the argument that they have a moral justification, a legal justification for the use of force. I remember actually, not to go harken back to too much 80s stuff, but I don't know if you remember when we bombed Libya, like when Ronald Reagan sent the planes from from
over Lockerbie
for Lockerbie in I think it was 1986 if memory serves. But I do remember, I very much remember the speech, Ronald Reagan coming on television, back to our presidents coming on television and giving a justification immediately after the event. This had happened, and here's why it had happened, right? And there was a sense that we had there was a duty. This is done in our name. We just went and killed people and blew stuff up, using your taxpayers, putting your sons and daughters at risk, straining our alliances, or whatever, all these things we just did in our name. And now I need to explain it to you. and you might disagree with it, but I have a duty to explain it to you, right? And to say that I have a legal and a moral justification for it. And of course, at some point, Congress has a role if it goes on for longer. And we're in a moment where none of that is happening, right? Where, I mean, there certainly is some people asking questions, but why is that not the first question? Where you apparently are about to engage in a war. Why? What's the legal justification for it? It's not fentanyl. It can't possibly be cocaine. It can't possibly be cocaine. So what is it? Right? It begins to sound a lot more like Putin's justification for going into Ukraine, which is sort of weird historical revisionism. They stole our oil from us, or some kind of lunacy. And if that is going to be the justification, well, certainly that has to be, Congress has to have a role. That's not an emergency. They didn't steal our oil yesterday. So Congress presumably has some role in deciding whether we're going to go, do that. Anyway, it's that one undercovered, firmly undercovered.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, it's members of the military, it's America's sons and daughters who are going to be sent to be part of whatever this military action becomes. And that is incredibly undercovered.
Yeah.
I know that I live in Vermont, and our Vermont Air National Guard has been activated. They are going to be deployed to,
wow.
It seems to be Puerto Rico. And they fly F-35s. That's what our Air National Guard does here in Vermont. We're a huge F-35 base. So why are they the only ones? How many other states have members of their National Guard who are being called up right now and activated to be part of this action? I just, between not hearing about that and suddenly not hearing about whatever is happening on the immigration, snatching off the street project that we have going on, that just seems to have completely fallen out of the media. Like, how are these not issues worth covering? These are, we just had a member of the National Guard die who was deployed in Washington, D.C. for an absurd reason. And we don't have enough interest as members of the media that we're going to be asking questions about what next is going to happen unnecessarily, or if it is necessary, what the justification is that we're going to put these people in harm's way.
Right. I think it's one where, I mean, even where it does get covered, it's sort of covered, attached to a narrative that feels sort of juicier, right? So was the National Guard member killed by an immigrant, right? And so now we have a different kind of, kind of controversy, as opposed to, why was this person even here, right? Why wasn't she at home living her life? And maybe the last one I'll throw in for now is another maybe close to home one for me. I live in Washington State, is the other side of the country, and we've had a series of massive storms, these atmospheric river storms that have caused what I think will be billions of dollars in damage, shut down multiple roads. The state is very divided by mountains, so kind of east-west passes over the mountains are shut down. There's really only one open now because the roads have been washed out. I mean, we're talking not like little roads, great big roads. And that's been, all over, the levees failing and towns cut off and all kinds of things. And it's, obviously weather happens all over the country everywhere, and it's covered locally. This is a part of a sort of what appears to be a kind of longer term trend of much wetter winters as a part of climate change. And the related story, there is a National Climate Action Research Agency that Russell Vought, the president's sort of budget henchman, head of the OMB, announced as being going to be broken up. This is a research center that has hundreds of researchers that have only focused on climate and weather since the 1960s. It is important for understanding the weather and all of the kind of climate systems for now, coming up on 60 years. It's been added as it is the leader in the world on this. And as we have done with so many things in science, the administration is just smashing it, and they're transparent about the reason that they're smashing it. And the reason is that they don't like that it provides science that is consistent with the hypothesis that we have human-driven climate change, and they don't like that. They call it climate alarmism or whatever. And so the answer is not sort of produce good science that maybe questions a hypothesis. If you don't agree with it, the answer is smash the people telling the truth, and we'll all be poorer for it. These storms are as big and impactful as this set of atmospheric rivers has been, and the damage that it's done in Washington. We've had great forecasting on it, and that's allowed levees to be shored up, and it's allowed people to be evacuated, and it's allowed us to have very little loss of life as a result of that. When we don't have the systems that let us understand what these things are and when they're coming and how they work, we won't have that, and that is undercovered. And we cover ridiculous short-term stories and these big stories that are going to result in huge damage to the economy and probably loss of life over time. We just let happen. So anyway, lots more we could add to the over covered and under covered, but those are mine for the week, and yours are as well. And maybe we'll have some more next week, I'm sure, because there'll always be.
Yeah, we'll have to pull that thread further on the undercovered around the Washington floods and the closing of this climate research group, because you mentioned that we'll all be poorer for this. We won't all be poorer for this. There are some people who are going to be richer for this, and that is part of our problem. And that's another thing that we'll talk about in, things that are undercovered, that the amount of corruption that is happening connected to our government right now is staggering, and it is staggeringly, there's just doesn't seem to be a tremendous amount of interest in covering it. It's bizarre. John, I love talking with you.
Likewise.
And we do so much of it. But I really
you guys.
enjoy...
Thanks for tuning in our one-on-one meeting.
Thanks for hanging. If you've managed to stick it out,
if you made it this far. Have a great Christmas, and we'll talk to you after the break. Got some fun conversations coming up, both between us, but also with some great guests. So looking forward to it. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Signal Fire, everywhere you get your podcasts, every Wednesday.